I woke up restrained in a hospital bed. They said I'd been found running through traffic, high and violent. The problem was, the last thing I remembered wasn't the street. It was being chosen. I woke up because my shoulders were burning. Not sharp pain, not sudden. Pressure. The kind that builds slowly when something has been holding you in place longer than your body can ignore. I tried to lift my arms. Leather stopped me. Wrist restraints, padded, buckled tight to the metal rails of the bed. When I tested them again, harder, the restraints didn't give. They were fitted precisely. Not tight enough to cut circulation, not loose enough to allow movement. My legs were strapped too, one band across the thighs, another at the ankles. A wide belt across my chest tightened automatically when I inhaled too deeply. I stopped breathing for a second, then I forced myself to breathe normally again. I turned my head. The room was small, rectangular, green walls, dull and worn, the color used in places where people weren't meant to stay long. No windows, no visible vents. There was a single camera fixed into the corner above the door. It was angled so it could see my face and my hands at the same time. The overhead light was dim but constant. No switch I could see, no shadows either. A hospital room, but not the kind people recover in. A woman in scrubs stood at the foot of the bed, writing on a clipboard. She didn't look rushed. She didn't look concerned. She looked like someone following a checklist. "You're awake," she said without looking up. "Why am I restrained?" I asked. My voice sounded wrong, thick, slow, like it had to travel farther than it should. She stepped closer, checked my pupils, shined a pen light into my eyes. She did this efficiently, without apology. "You were brought in early this morning," she said. "Police escort. You were found running through traffic, shouting at pedestrians. You resisted when officers attempted to restrain you." "That's not what happened," I said. She made a note. "Do you remember taking drugs last night?" she asked. "No." Another note. "Do you remember where you were before you started running?" The answer came before I could stop it. "A club." Her pen paused. "What kind of club?" "Underground," I said. "I didn't know it existed until last night." She waited a beat, then resumed writing. "They didn't leave me alone after that. Someone checked my vitals every hour. Someone else came to draw blood. A third person asked the same questions in a slightly different order, like they were testing for inconsistencies. Each time, I gave the same answers. Each time, they wrote something down. Hours passed without markers. No clock, no daylight. Only the overhead light and the soft sound of shoes in the hallway outside. Eventually, the woman returned. "They searched the location you described," she said. "Authorities found nothing unusual. No illegal substances. No concealed rooms." "They cleaned it," I said. She didn't react. "The individuals you were with gave statements," she continued. "They described you as heavily intoxicated, agitated, paranoid. They reported that you accused them of involvement in a conspiracy. They're lying." "They all told the same story," she said, "separately." That was when the memory broke open, not the dance floor, behind it. The memories didn't return smoothly. They came back like photographs dropped on a table, out of order, overlapping, edges bent. I remembered the party earlier that night. A rented loft, music too loud, people I half recognized, friends of friends. Enough familiar faces to make the unfamiliar ones feel safe. That was where I met Marcus. He wasn't loud, he wasn't magnetic, he was calm, well-dressed, neutral colors, no phone in his hand. When he spoke, people leaned toward him without realizing it. He asked my name, what I did, whether I liked underground music. He suggested somewhere else. "Invite only," he said, "not listed, real crowd." I remembered hesitating. Then I remembered everyone else agreeing before I could object. The entrance was an alley I'd passed dozens of times without noticing. An unmarked steel door, no sign, no music bleeding through. A woman stood outside with a tablet. She checked faces, not names. When she hesitated at me, Marcus nodded once. I was let in. Inside, the club was dark and crowded. The music wasn't just loud, it was structured to overwhelm. Multiple rhythms layered out of sync, lights pulsing without pattern, drinks handed to me without asking. I remembered thinking I should slow down. I remembered the floor tilting slightly. Then the room changed. Behind the dance floor, past a curtain I didn't remember entering, there was a corridor. Concrete walls, no posters, no graffiti. At the end of it, a door. Marcus held it open. "Quieter back here," he said. I followed. The memory stopped there. I lay still in the restraints, staring at the ceiling. "You remember now?" the woman in scrubs asked. "Yes," I said. She made another note. Later, a man introduced himself as a psychiatrist. He asked fewer questions, but they were sharper. "Why do you think they chose you?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "Do you believe they're watching you now?" "No," I said. That was true. They didn't need to watch. They already had me. When they finally removed the restraints, it wasn't because they believed me. It was because I'd learned the rule. Speak carefully. Agree slowly. Never insist. That was when they moved me to observation. That was when the waiting started. The room behind the club wasn't hidden. That was the first correction my memory made once it stabilized. It wasn't concealed behind false walls or secret doors. It didn't rely on clever architecture or illusion. The corridor leading to it was straight, wide enough for two people to walk side by side, lit by bare industrial fixtures bolted directly into the ceiling. It wasn't meant to be discovered accidentally. It was meant to be entered deliberately. The door at the end of the corridor wasn't locked. It was heavier than the others, reinforced steel with a handle polished smooth by repeated use. Marcus held it open without ceremony. "Inside," he said. I stepped through. The room was older than the club built around it. That was obvious immediately. The walls weren't poured concrete. They were stone, large blocks fitted together without visible mortar. The ceiling was low and flat, supported by beams darkened with age. The floor was a continuous surface of fitted slabs, worn smooth in places where people had stood repeatedly over time. At the center was the circle, 8 feet across, cut directly into the stone, deep enough that dirt and residue collected permanently in the grooves. The carving wasn't decorative. Every line was straight or precisely curved, no flourishes, no symbols added for effect. It was a diagram. 6 radial channels extended outward from the circle, evenly spaced, each terminating at a shallow basin carved into the floor itself. The basins weren't identical. One was deeper, one wider, one etched with additional markings along its rim. They served different purposes. I knew that before anyone explained it. 6 iron hooks were embedded into the floor between the basins, not rusted, maintained. The metal was worn smooth where hands and restraints had been attached repeatedly. This wasn't the first time the room had been used. People stood around the perimeter when I entered, 12 of them. Some I recognized from the party, others I didn't. All of them calm, focused, no phones, no drinks, no idle movement. Marcus stepped past me into the circle. "This is not a performance," he said, speaking clearly enough for everyone to hear. "And it is not symbolic." No one responded. "This is a summons," he continued. "It works because it has always worked." He gestured to the markings beneath his feet. "The entity we call does not appear spontaneously. It responds to conditions. Those conditions must be met precisely." He looked at me. "You're here because you meet them." Hands guided me forward. They didn't drag me. They didn't restrain me immediately. They placed me. My feet were adjusted until the soles lined up with 2 intersecting grooves at the center of the circle. Someone nudged my shoulders until my spine was straight. Another corrected the angle of my head. They treated my body like equipment. "Don't move," Marcus said. Metal bands were fastened around my wrists, not cuffs, bands, Heavy, cold, etched with the same markings as the circle. When they tightened, my hands went numb, then began to tingle as circulation adjusted. "These bands regulate output," Marcus said. "You don't bleed evenly without them." The chanting began. Not words, numbers, counted aloud by different voices, each responsible for a specific sequence. The numbers repeated in cycles, always returning to the same intervals. When one voice stopped, another took over without pause. It was a system. Marcus stepped back to the edge of the circle. "The entity is ancient," he said, "older than the language we use to describe it. It does not enter our world directly." He pointed to the basins. "It requires a prepared space, a living anchor, a witness that can survive contact." A woman approached with a blade. The blade was iron, old, unadorned. The edge had been sharpened recently, but the metal itself showed signs of repeated heating and cooling. She took my hand and turned my palm upward. "One cut," Marcus said. "No more." The blade pressed down. The pain was brief and clean. Blood welled immediately and spilled into the carved channel beneath my hand. It flowed outward along the grooves, guided by gravity and the precision of the carving. Each basin began to fill at a different rate. The chanting adjusted. When one basin filled too quickly, Marcus raised his hand. Someone tightened the band around my wrist, restricting flow until the levels equalized. "Balance is required," Marcus said. "The entity rejects excess." I tried to pull away then. Hands appeared instantly. Efficient, strong. They repositioned my feet when they shifted, forced my shoulders back into alignment when I twisted. "This is not coercion," Marcus said calmly. "You're already here." The chanting reached a new sequence. A woman stepped forward holding a small ceramic vessel. She pressed it against the back of my neck. "Stay conscious," she said. The liquid burned going down, bitter, grounding. It sharpened awareness instead of dulling it. "This prevents dissociation," Marcus explained. "The entity requires recognition." The air in the room changed. Not temperature, not light, pressure. The kind you feel when something large occupies a space too small for it. The chanting stopped. Marcus stepped into the circle again. He placed his hand into the central basin and lifted it slowly, letting the blood drip back into the grooves. "I call you by the name recorded," he said, "by the sound that opens the way." He spoke the name. It wasn't long. It wasn't loud. It was exact. The floor shuddered once. Not violently, deliberately. The markings darkened, as if something beneath the stone had drawn closer to the surface. I felt the pressure increase. Marcus leaned toward me. "This is the point where most fail," he said. "The mind resists when it understands what is arriving." Something responded, not a shape, not a voice, a presence that pressed against the boundaries of the room, testing them. The basins vibrated, the hooks rattled, the chanting resumed briefly, then cut off sharply. Someone shouted something I didn't understand. The pressure spiked. That was when I screamed. I woke up on asphalt, cold, rough. My hands were wrapped in clean bandages. My shoes were gone. My phone and wallet were missing. The club entrance was sealed, the alley empty. I ran. I tried to explain. By the time the police arrived, the ritual was already over, or so I thought. They moved me to a different wing on the fourth day. No explanation, no paperwork shown to me. 2 orderlies arrived with a wheelchair and a nurse I hadn't seen before. She spoke calmly, like this was routine. "New room," she said. "Quieter." I didn't argue. The new ward was smaller. Fewer rooms, fewer patients. The doors were solid, each with a narrow window set too high to look through comfortably. Cameras were visible in every corner, not hidden this time. No attempt to soften the fact that I was being watched. The rules were clearer here. Lights out at 10, medication at fixed hours, no visitors without approval, no leaving the ward. I followed them. Compliance shortened conversations. Resistance extended stays. I learned that quickly. The psychiatrist visited once a day. He asked the same questions in different orders, always circling back to the same points. Did I still believe I had been targeted? Did I believe anyone was trying to harm me? Did I understand why my account conflicted with the evidence? I answered carefully. I was confused, I said. I misinterpreted what happened. I accept that my memory may be unreliable. Each correct answer loosened the system's grip slightly. On the 6th day, they removed the camera from my room. On the 7th, they allowed visitors. The nurse checked her clipboard before speaking. "You have someone requesting to see you," she said. "He's listed as a personal contact." My stomach tightened. "What's his name?" I asked. She glanced down. "Marcus." I nodded. "That's fine," I said. She didn't seem surprised. He entered the room like he belonged there. Same posture, same neutral expression. Well-dressed, understated, clean. He wore a visitor badge clipped neatly to his jacket. The nurse addressed him politely, then left us alone. Marcus sat across from me, folding his hands in his lap. "You're adapting well," he said. "You planned this," I replied. "Yes." "You told the police I was violent." "Yes." "You told them I was using drugs." "Yes." He didn't justify it. He didn't soften it. "It was necessary," he said. "Uncooperative subjects can't be retained." "Retained for what?" I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. "Completion," he said. I swallowed. "You said the ritual was interrupted." "It was," he agreed. "But interruption isn't failure. You didn't get what you wanted." Marcus shook his head. "We achieved the primary condition," he said. The entity responded. "To what?" I asked. "You didn't open anything." He leaned forward slightly. "You misunderstand the process," he said. "The first ritual isn't about arrival, it's about selection." "Selection of what?" "Of who?" He corrected. He gestured subtly toward me. "You were conscious. You acknowledged it. You survived contact." "You drugged me," I said. "Yes." "And it still worked," he replied. I felt cold. "You don't summon it once," Marcus continued. "You establish a point of reference, a living anchor. After that, location becomes irrelevant." "This place," I started. "This place is ideal," he said. "Controlled environment, continuous monitoring, authority that explains away inconsistencies. You're using the hospital. We cooperate with systems that already exist," he said. "They don't need to know why." I clenched my hands. "You can't take me again," I said. "I'm documented. People know I'm here." Marcus smiled faintly. "They know you're unstable," he said. "They know you're prone to episodes. If you're transferred, sedated, restrained, nothing about that will seem unusual." "When?" I asked. He stood. "When the next conditions are prepared," he said. "When the space is ready." He paused at the door. "You'll wake up somewhere else," he added. "This time there won't be a crowd, no music, no variables." He looked back at me. "And this time," he said, "you won't be released early." He left without waiting for a response. That night, I didn't sleep. The intercom crackled periodically with routine announcements, room checks, medication reminders, codes I didn't recognize. Somewhere beneath the static, I heard a sequence of numbers repeated at even intervals. I told myself it was coincidence. At midnight, the lights dimmed automatically. At 12:05, the door lock disengaged with a soft click. I sat up in bed. Footsteps approached from the hall, calm, unhurried. A voice spoke through the doorway. "Stay still," it said. "This will be easier if you cooperate." The door opened. I didn't scream. There was no point, because now I understood the rule. If you're chosen once, you're never free again. Escape doesn't cancel the ritual. Hospitals don't stop it. Authorities don't interrupt it. They just hold you until it's time to finish.